And so I'm not throwing any stones at anybody. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad we're going to get stuff. But there's that part of me as a fan that's like, man, I don't want to get attached and I don't want to get too excited because odds are another 5 minutes from now, right, it's going to be done again. And so now you're going to have this, more TV from AEW during the week where you're supposed to have, CM Punk and Ace Steel being some cornerstones of some creative, but for how long? CM Punk has had a really blessed position in life where he feels like he can do whatever he wants, professionally because of that freedom. But at the same time, doing whatever you want because of that freedom may not be the best thing for business.
Back with a new episode of the Wrestle Chat Podcast. Welcome, y'all. My name is the AntMan. Here we go with episode number 10. Michael Glavin, welcome back. Did you think we'd ever make it to 10 episodes? I hear that most podcasts stop at around 6.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard for longevity in podcasts, but let me tell you something, buddy. I never doubted you for a second. Never once.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the belief. I appreciate that. We all need believers, and I'm glad I got you. Here at the top, before we jump in and really get started on this thing, we've got WWE SummerSlam tickets we want to hook you up with. Detroit's Ford Field coming up on August 5th. 2 tickets on the lower level. Head over to our website and get signed up at WrestleChatPodcast.com/summer. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see it right there on your screen. WrestleChatPodcast.com/summer. We're doing this drawing here in just a couple of weeks, so if you want to win, be sure to get signed up before July 1st. No hoops to jump through, just a simple registration. 2 tickets to WWE's SummerSlam, and we want you to win. August 5th, Ford Field in Detroit. Hit up WrestleChatPodcast.com/summer. Quick overview. We're headed up the ladder for Money in the Bank premium live event. 2 shocking appearances show up on NXT, plus it's official. CM Punk is coming to AEW's Collision premiere. We've got a lot to get to. Let's dive in, starting off with Monday Night Raw first. Money in the Bank. It's the next big premium live event for WWE coming up July 1st at the O2 Arena in London. It looks like a lot of these premium live events are going overseas this year, and that's probably going to be that way for years to come, especially with the money behind some of these. The qualifying matches kicked off on Monday. So far, Shinsuke Nakamura and Ricochet are in the match right now. I'm very interested to see who else ends up in these qualifying matches coming up, because that could be really telling on future championship storylines.
What we see is that a whole different crop of people are being integrated into these Money in the Bank matches differently than we've ever seen before. If you remember when Money in the Bank was newer on the scene within that first 5 to 7 years, it was Kane. It was Chris Jericho. It was Edge. It was maybe a little bit of Booker T in there. It was a lot of the same guys. And it stuck that way up until this year where you could say, hey, I know who's going to be in it. But under some new management, we're seeing a completely different crop of people in this match. And it's super great. Watching some of these shows and some of these matchups, sitting there going, man, I don't know who's going to be in the match, because both of them are very, very likely and have potential to be in the match. So it's great. It's great to see how all this has shaped up, and I think it's going to be a really good pay-per-view overall.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing, what the challenge for the champions and which champion they go after, and if the champions that are currently champions are the champions when it comes time to cash in. I really like how they've set this up, and it's led. I mean, this was a match at WrestleMania to kick off with, and it becomes its own premium live event. One time at the arena, at the stadium in Las Vegas, and now moving overseas to the O2 Arena. Mm-hmm. This is becoming one of the bigger and better premium live events for WWE, mm-hmm. and I'm not mad about it either, because those are always unpredictable matches. Yep. Anytime you pull those inanimate objects into the ring that can fly all over and do some big damage, unlike, we always see kendo sticks. Those are not involved in anything else except for professional wrestling, I believe.
Why are they in the building in the first place?
And so many of them under the ring. But a ladder, this is these are things that we have around our house, we have in our sheds. And so to see, and everybody's, caught their leg or their shin on one of these before, and you know how bad that hurts. Imagine that smacking you in the face. Yep. Well, after their kickoff match to determine a new WWE World Champion, we saw AJ Styles and Seth freaking Rollins team up to take on Judgment Day. However, nothing about this match really led to any speculation on who would be a credible threat to the new champion's title, at least when Raw went off the air. If you had to guess right now, I was going to say, who would you say it would be? But I guess after SmackDown, we know who the first threat is going to be, and that is going to be Damian Priest coming up on Monday.
Yep. It's definitely an interesting matchup. The way we've been trained to view a lot of these open challenges over time is that they're going to be established, big name, marquee people that are coming out to do these challenges. And we're entering this new phase of WWE where we're seeing this generational shift of talent. And so at first, I'm going to be honest, and this is no offense to anybody, I was like, oh, Damian Priest. But then I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, oh, Damian Priest. And so, initially I was like, oh, that's kind of a letdown. But then the more I thought about it, he has been booked super well. He's been doing great mic work. He's been really doing some good stuff in the ring, especially what he did with Bad Bunny at Backlash. We're going to get a good wrestling match. Am I saying this is going to propel any storylines? Maybe, maybe not. But it's going to be a great wrestling match, and I think we're going to be thankful that we got it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not the same impact of him of Rollins standing in the ring and hearing Brock Lesnar's music hit or John Cena's music hit. But I do like how they're building. They make you wonder and wait and watch, and they're always good matches. Yep. I haven't seen a lot of stinkers out of stuff like this, so I'm excited to see what happens on Monday there. It looks like you're going to get your wish on seeing Imperium in the hunt for the unified tag titles. What do you think about that?
It's going to be great, man. I feel like I saw it coming a little ways away. At least I wanted to see it a little ways away. Maybe I willed it into existence. Maybe
you did. It was all you.
Sent some brain waves over to the Triple H and he decided to book it. But I'm glad that I'm going to see it. I think there's so much potential there. I am a sucker. I don't know where this came from, especially considering my age. I am always a sucker for a good faction. And, Imperium is ripe to be a part of that. They are so good in everything they're doing. And, man, WWE, give us that trios title, and let's see us get some trios action on that too. But super happy that Imperium's in the hunt now. Let's throw the belts on them and see what happens.
Speaking of the tag division, it was also nice to see another very strong showing from Indus Sher, Jinder Mahal's new faction. And, man, he's a great leader for this group. We talked about this before. Those guys look more impressive every time we see them in the ring. And it really does help when you see guys like this in the right role. Yep. And it really looks like these two are all three of them actually are in a great role for them as characters and them as humans, because this faction for sure works as well. Kill Bill's cosplays, Becky Lynch got another dose of Stratus faction from Trish Stratus and her new protege, Zoe Stark. The numbers advantage with Stark and Stratus have really taken over Becky in the last two run-ins. But that leads one to believe that there could possibly be a return of Lita in the near future. Wouldn't you think about that?
I would hope so. I think there's some storyline here that needs to be tied up. Obviously, Lita wasn't wanting to do a full-time schedule, or maybe had some prior commitments, but we do have some story here that's undone. And so Lita coming back to be involved in that picture would be a great bow on the whole thing to see her and Becky back together to go against Zoe and Trish. And man, what a great group of talent there. I said this, I think last week, but man, so excited for Zoe Stark and being able to kind of sit under Trish Stratus to learn, to grow. And again, as much as I'm a sucker for a faction, I'm a sucker for a good heater too. And so for Trish to have a heater, I think it's perfect for her character right now. And Lita coming back would just be the icing on the cake. And man, what a great SummerSlam match that could be. So here's hoping.
Before we bounce over to hit a couple of highlights from NXT, what's new on the Man-Child Chronicles podcast this week, Michael?
Oh, man, there's so much stuff that we've got going on. For those who have tuned in before, we are coming to video in July. We are working behind the scenes to as I'm sure you guys can imagine, orchestrating video via satellite from 4 different locations has its challenges, but we're producing a bunch of content right now, getting ready to hit you in July. But this week on the Man-Child Chronicles, we did a bunch of really fun stuff. It was a great episode, lots of laughs. We did Stories from a Hat, which is a bunch of pieces of paper in a hat with a buzzword on it, and we pull it out of the hat, and whatever the buzzword is, we tell a real story around the buzzword. And it's interesting because, we all have stories in life, but so many of them are buried in our subconscious. But hearing that buzzword, allows us to tell some stories. We also are doing a movie roulette review. So we play this game where we answer a bunch of really stupid questions, and it leads to a random movie that we have to watch. And so we encourage everybody to watch that movie with us throughout the week. Yeah. And then we come back and we talk about it and review it. This week, it was the Disney classic, The Big Green. And so I
don't even remember that movie.
Yeah, it was back from the 90s when sports movies were all the rage. But it's a great movie. But check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. The Man-Child Chronicles. You're not going to want to miss this week. There was a lot of laughs, and Jay almost passed out. So it'll be a good time.
And also, to get ready for video, you can go subscribe to the Man-Child Chronicles on YouTube as well. Easy link. If you're watching this podcast right now, you can go to other channels. Just scroll down, especially on a computer. You can scroll down and you can see it right there. The Man-Child Chronicles podcast. Click on it and hit subscribe there as well. That show releases the day before this one. So every Friday, Man-Child Chronicles. Every Saturday, Wrestle Chat podcast. Back to it, NXT, getting an injection from the main roster. This is what I love this, because I think this is what you should do with guys that you just don't have anything for. You give them a chance to branch out and get creative with their character, all while helping pull up a younger star down in developmental. It looks like the Baron Corbin will be the next big threat for NXT champ Carmelo Hayes, and following a great showing in his Intercontinental bout with Gunther, Mustafa Ali shows up in NXT. How do you feel about these two showings this week?
I am big fan. So I have loved Baron Corbin all the way back to the Lone Wolf stuff. The only thing I didn't like is he was trying to hold on to that hair too long, but he finally took the hint and did it. But here's the thing about Baron Corbin. He is an exceptional talent, amazing athlete. But over the last several years, he's been booked in that kind of comedy, non-serious role. And I think this is a great opportunity for him to hit the reset button, to be down in NXT. I don't think he needs to necessarily learn to do something different or work on a character. I think he just needs the breathing room from the comedic act, of broke Baron Corbin or whatever he was, and focus on the NXT title and just beef himself up and make himself a serious player in the game again. When he was standing over, it's Carmelo, right?
Yeah.
When he was standing over Carmelo, holding up that NXT title, man, he just looked good. And I would love, as much as I don't want to take steam away from any of the young guys, boy, I would not be upset one bit to see Baron Corbin have an NXT title run. Mustafa, we'll have to see what he's going to do down there. Obviously, he was just doing the old Sting from the rafters bit. But I think he's got a lot of great things that he could do as well. He's gone through, we talked about this within the last few weeks, he's gone through about 17 gimmicks over the last 6 months.
Yeah,
and jumping back down to NXT with what it is anymore, for a long time that was viewed as a demotion. And I think anymore it's quite the opposite. There's an equal amount of focus on NXT as anything else, but there's less pressure from your mainstream roster producers where you actually get to experiment and flex some creativity. So excited for both of those guys to have some programs down there. And if I didn't have a reason to watch NXT before, which I did, I certainly do now.
If you don't follow Baron on Instagram, you should, because you see a lot of his real life in that as well. And he loves to smoke and cook a lot of beef, a lot of meat, and has fun doing it too. So he'd be a great follow for that. And you can kind of see his character come out on his own Instagram. So I wonder if he doesn't do some of that. So I don't think he's going to be a cook or anything like that on NXT, but you can at least see some of his personality and see some of that come out that's not pre-scripted.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to see what he does there. Before we move over to TBS and AEW Dynamite, I want to ask, have you taken a minute to check out the World Wrestling Trivia app yet? Daniel Butler, he's a friend of the Wrestle Chat podcast. He's developed a really fun app. There are a ton of trivia questions in here with topics from the Attitude Era, WCW, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and beyond, AEW, and one category that can feature them all called All Eras, and you never know what question is going to pop up in that category. It's really fun. Plus, the app has a community area where you can play other fans in versus mode, and there's even polls that you, the fans, can add your own question to. In fact, we just loaded one asking, whose title looks better, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, or Snoop Dogg? You can go vote in that poll up there on the app. And the best part about the World Wrestling Trivia app is it's free. Head over to worldwrestlingtrivia.com to check it out and search for it in the App Store to download it today. A big thank you to Daniel and the World Wrestling Trivia app for being a sponsor of the Wrestle Chat podcast. AEW Dynamite. I want you to watch these two guys, Juice Robinson, Jay White, the Bullet Club Gold Group. This has potential to be one of the most intriguing stories in this organization. Two very intriguing, unique, outlandish characters in the business today. They feel out of control. They feel dangerous. And to pair them up against FTR, arguably the best tag team in all of wrestling right now, it has the potential to be the most interesting story in AEW. Make sure you keep your eyes on this one. In the main event, we saw a mixed tag match. Adam Cole Baby with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, to take on Chris Jericho and Saraya. We really tried to keep things positive here on the Wrestle Chat podcast. However, we also want to keep things honest. And this feud has felt like, have you ever put lighter fluid on wet wood? Here's what it does. You put lighter fluid on wet wood and you light it and it burns. You're like, oh my gosh, I got a good fire. And about 15, 20 seconds later, you're just left with wet, burnt wood. Mm-hmm. It goes out and there's nothing left to it. I know it's not over, but it's one that I had these high hopes for. Did you feel that this match built to anything on this show, or do you feel like we're just left with I kind of figured it'd go that way?
More of the latter. A lot of talented people involved, but for some reason this just hasn't caught. And I'm not sure if it's because they fumbled right after the beating on Britt Baker, maybe.
Yeah.
But something with it hasn't stuck or worked or whatever it is. And it's not for the lack of talent, like I said, but maybe they don't know what the end result is that they're working toward. If it's kind of like Michael Scott
working backwards.
Yeah, it's kind of like Michael Scott from The Office. It's like, I just keep talking till the sentence comes and it lands, and we'll just figure it out when we get there. But
great analogy, because that's how I feel sometimes. Like somebody just started telling a story in this thing, and they're still just talking, and there's no end to it.
Don't ever, at any point in time, for any reason whatsoever, to anybody ever in the entire world, do anything that ever could be considered. It's just that. And
you start off, you're listening, you're like, oh, this is going to be good, and about halfway you're like.
So now, the people involved, they'll turn it around. We like to keep things positive, but they'll turn it around. They're still giving us some good wrestling, but there's just there's the X factor missing from the story. We'll just hope they find their way somewhere along the way.
Is the X factor a plan? That's what I kind of feel like it needs.
I think it might be.
Plan.
I think it might be.
It could be that. We had one more thing, too, that we want to make sure and touch on is Tony Khan back on screen again, announcing something else about AEW Collision coming in June 17th. Really excited for this brand new show. It's going to be on Saturday night. It is official now. CM Punk will be there. Man, I don't remember if I sent this to you or not, but if you take a second and listen to the crowd response, it's split. I know it's going to be in Chicago. Very smart. If CM Punk's going to come back to do it in Chicago, I don't anticipate the Chicago crowd being split. The viewers for sure, and any other town outside of Chicago. I'm anxious to see what happens with this. Are you?
I am, and I am a CM Punk fan. His work with John Cena is some of the best of what's happened over the last 20 years or whatever. The problem is that what we were supposed to get was this triumphant CM Punk return on his first emergence into AEW, and it just felt it wasn't but 5 minutes before the drama started again. And there's this tension that's like, man, I am for this guy. I will pay to see this guy wrestle because I really love him. I love his character. But man, if you can't play ball and do business, then really you're letting me down as a fan. And so I'm not throwing any stones at anybody. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad we're going to get stuff. But there's that part of me as a fan that's like, man, I don't want to get attached and I don't want to get too excited because odds are another 5 minutes from now, it's going to be done again. And so now you're going to have this more TV from AEW during the week where you're supposed to have, CM Punk and Ace Steel being some cornerstones of some creative, but for how long? And so if it sticks, it'll reaffirm my faith in everything going on. This is no fault of Tony Khan, no fault of AEW, but it's just, CM Punk has had a really blessed position in life where he handled his money well. And he feels like he can do whatever he wants, professionally because of that freedom. But at the same time, doing whatever you want because of that freedom may not be the best thing for business.
It may not.
And so anyway, I'm rambling to say that, man, I really want it to work as a fan. I desperately want it to work, but I'm holding my breath a little bit because I'm just not sure how it's all going to shake out.
I think that they have a great opportunity to take something that is very, very well documented. Everyone knows by now who has any interest in pro wrestling that there is a real feud in this company between CM Punk and some other guys.
Yep.
If you don't make money with that, you are missing the mark.
Yep.
And I am saying that to Tony Khan and anybody else who will listen. You have an opportunity to take something very, very real. You don't even half the script is already written for you.
Yep.
There's a feud here. Now do something with it. If you fumble this one, I worry for these guys.
Yep.
Because while they're riding on the high of what the waters are right now, sometimes a wave can capsize a boat. Yep. And I don't want that to happen to this company because I like what they're doing. They need to get above everything else that they're doing, take a look at it, and go, well, here's some embers burning over here. Let's do something with this. There's some embers over here. Let's do something with that. Let's fan some flames in certain places and build some really, really great stories and make some serious money with this. You've got 70,000 people have already bought tickets, and there is no story. There are no matches. You have an opportunity to do something really, really great or fumble on the 1 yard line.
That's right. And there's precedent for these situations too. You go back to Lita, Matt Hardy, and Edge. That was a very, very real thing that happened in real life. And behind the scenes, they got everybody in a room and they said, we're not trying to tell you not to hate each other. We're just trying to tell you to do it out there so we can all make money while we're doing it.
Yep.
And so protect each other, don't hurt each other, but hate each other and let it come out inside the squared circle. And so what we learned from that scenario over in WWE is that it was big ratings. It wasn't the first time, but it was one of the primary times where the lines of wrestling and reality blurred, and it was ratings magic. And so, I implore, all ye producers in AEW, Tony, get these guys in a room and let's have them do business in the middle of the ring, because it's there for the taking.
Man, we love that you guys are here, and thank you so much for listening and supporting the Wrestle Chat Podcast. A great way to share what the Wrestle Chat Podcast is all about is with some Wrestle Chat Podcast merch, and we just added a couple of new t-shirts to the lineup, Skull and Scratch, Lucha for Life, and even new Wrestle Chat Podcast shorts. They're ones you can see them right there on your screen if you're watching this right now. Head over to WrestleChatPodcast.com to check them all out right there on the front page. And thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. SmackDown. This is the 1,000th day celebration for the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, a brand new I don't think there's a name for it yet, but Golden Network logo title. Does this replace the other two? And if so, what will Paul Heyman carry to the ring other than a microphone and a few extra pounds? I did what is he going to do if there's only one title? He's going to carry that one? The Tribal Chief celebration was interrupted by the Usos, the same guys that the wise man said wouldn't be there. Solo looked to be siding with his brothers, as we kind of all expected, but his allegiance will always be with the Tribal Chief, and he laid that Samoan spike into Jimmy's neck when Paul asked Roman about Jay. Roman said Jay will do what Jay always does. And that's fall in line. This right here, without question, for me, was the best 20 minutes of television all week. And I was so excited to see what happened. I was really excited to see the belt let down by that, I'll be honest. I think Snoop Dogg's looked better. But, just seeing what happened in this story as it continues to evolve just goes, oh, okay, this is way deeper than I thought. Every time something happens, I think, well, this goes way deeper than I thought. The question remains, what's next for Roman, though? Clearly, it's going to be something with Jimmy, right?
I would think so. I mean, there is so much to unpack here. This storyline, I think I've said this before, has been nothing but onion. Just layer after layer after layer. And tonight, they did it to me again. I thought it was going to go one way, and then right at the last second, they went a different way, and I loved it. I love the tension. I love the emotion in it. I mean, there are full-blown sitcoms and soap operas and other dramas that aren't doing their stories as well as this group of, sports entertainers. And so, excuse me, it doesn't look like the Bloodline storyline is anywhere near done yet. As for the title,
not anywhere close.
Not anywhere close. As for the title,
you're rushing out to buy it. I know you are.
Here's the thing.
I didn't even look. Is it in there? Is it in the store yet?
I see what the attempt was to go back to some more traditional golden titles. The only problem was, as a production guy myself, it kind of seemed like nobody put the title on the stand and then looked at it through a camera, because at least on my TV, now here's the thing. I don't have the nicest TV in the world, but I did pay a good solid $1,500, $2,000 for it a couple years ago. And on my TV, that thing yellow, dude. It's not gold, it's yellow. And so it just, it looks like the Pakistan replica on Etsy, if I'm being kind of honest. And I don't want to be mean. I'm not trying to, again, we like to be positive about wrestling, but both the titles he already had looked better than this one. And why not just go back down to the black one and just leave it as is? There were so many renderings online that was a modern version of the winged eagle from back in the day. Where's that at? Where's the prestigious title for a prestigious champion? And so I feel like this is a rare fumble by Triple H. He hasn't had many, but I guess we know now that he's not perfect. That's okay. There's lots of forgiveness to be had, but kind of let me down a little bit. But we'll see what they do with it going forward.
Man, I don't see, as with the introduction of the new world title and then seeing this, I think that the hopes of having a new winged eagle or something that looks like that or resembles that is pretty much gone, unfortunately, because that would have been cool to have something like that come back. A couple other things in the show. Zelina Vega, the first woman in the Money in the Bank ladder match after winning her qualifying match over Lacey Evans. Great to see LA Knight get the nod and move on to Money in the Bank. Whether he wins the briefcase or not, this could be a great show of confidence for this guy that I am really high on. It sounds like a lot of fans are really high on, especially when they were overdoing the press conference in Jeddah. There was a lot of chants for LA Knight. I'm excited to see that he's going to be going to that match. Does he win it? We'll have to wait until July to see that. There's been some talk this week, though, of the possibility of SmackDown moving. I know that you and I talked about SmackDown and its possibility of not being on Fox anymore here on this show a week or two ago after they were not a part of the Fox upfronts. That was a sure sign of some change. It seems that WWE is open to SmackDown moving to any night of the week, and I'm fairly certain they've covered every night of the week except for Monday. Do you ever see Raw moving from Monday and SmackDown taking its place? Because there's some talk about this.
Look, if your CEO and Nick Khan is saying, hey, we don't feel like we have to have Raw on Monday nights, that's because that conversation has already been had to some extent. That doesn't mean that any decisions have been made, but that means that, if you're saying it publicly, that means it's several conversations down the line privately. And so in this new world of being owned by another company, or at least in process of, what we're going to see is a lot of traditions that don't have any stake compromise for the betterment of business. What I mean by that is, I don't know that Vince McMahon, if it was up to him, would ever move Raw off of Monday nights because it's Monday Night Raw. But Vince isn't the only guy in charge anymore. And so, does it ruin the product for it to not be on Monday nights? No. It's just been a wrestling tradition up to this point. No different than when SmackDown has moved several times. So I think the board is completely cleared and blank, and I think we're about to see kind of a new scheduling era of wrestling, if you will. I think there's so many factors to consider, because you don't want to stomp all over NXT on whatever night it's on. You don't want to have Raw and SmackDown too close together, because that messes with production schedules and traveling and all these different types of things. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. What if we go back to a pre-tape SmackDown and we know what happens on Tuesday before Thursday?
I hope not.
I hope not as well. But I can tell you, I think every option is on the table for what's going to come.
Here's some things I've heard. Tell me if you heard anything different. So there's possibility. Most of everything I heard about Raw will stay where it is. SmackDown can move to any other day of the week, and they may add another hour to SmackDown, making it 3 hours as well. Talking about another new show for WWE, maybe not on a network, but on a streaming service, and one that lends itself to what made the Attitude Era of WWE successful, and that is something along the lines of TV 14. We know that they're never going to get away from PG. They do way too much with Make-A-Wish. They do way too much with charities. They have too many superheroes literally inside this business. They're not going to abandon that for a TV 14. But nothing says that they can't add it and add to it. And especially with streaming services, you can do whatever you want on there, say whatever you want on there, much like HBO or Showtime or anything like that back in the day. You don't have to be as conscious of the sponsors as you do on a network television show. We covered a lot. Was there anything that we missed on this week's podcast?
There's one very important thing that we did not discuss. It may be a little bit of old news now, but I saw the picture of it again today. Thumbtacks in the foot.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that I've ever watched something on wrestling that has made me want to vomit. But seeing the bottom of a foot with a bunch of thumbtacks in it made me nauseous. And I don't ever want to. I can see John Moxley take a hacksaw to his head. I can see barbed wire. I can see flaming tables. None of that compares to someone's bare foot stomping on a bunch of thumbtacks. Too far, man. Too far.
I know we talked about it in our special on Monday, but you must have got a close-up picture of this thing.
It's floating around on the internet, and I just saw it within the last day, and it is nasty. I don't know why you would sign up for something like that.
Yeah.
Too far, man.
That's Matt Jackson's foot from Double or Nothing. If you didn't see that pay-per-view, you can buy replays right now, and if you just want to go see this picture, we have that for you too. If you want to go check that out, it's disgusting. I don't know. He must be a country boy, one, and has never wore shoes and ran on gravel roads. That's all I think.
I just think it's going to hurt more when it gets through there, but that's all right. So anyway, that's the only other thing that I had to say. Of all the things that have happened in wrestling, we've done live sex shows. We've done, bikini contests. We've done Undertaker and, sacrificing Steve Austin, on a cross or something like that.
And the boss's daughter. Yeah,
exactly.
The
boss's daughter, that type of thing. Thumbtacks, too far. Too much.
Just where the thumbtacks win is what bothers you, I think.
Yep.
We want to thank you guys so much for hanging with us for a little bit here on the Wrestle Chat podcast. You get it every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we're also on YouTube. If you haven't jumped over and lived the YouTube experience on the Wrestle Chat podcast, we invite you to check that out as well. Check out the shirts and a chance to head to WWE's SummerSlam at Ford Field in Detroit over at WrestleChatPodcast.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, and Facebook. You can find us there on all those at Wrestle Chat Podcast. Michael, thank you so much for hanging out with us again today. Good to have you on the podcast as always.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Wrestle Chat Podcast too. We will see you guys next week.